Carl Jung's definition of the psychological attitudes and functions combining to make the personality types have been the basis of other systems such as MBTI and socionics. The first important aspect of Jung's model is extroversion versus introversion. Introversion is a close orientation to the subjective experience and one's inner world. Extroversion is a close orientation to the objective experience and the outer world. Now, let's overview the 4 functions, each of which has an introverted or extroverted manifestation that creates the 8 psychological types. Sensation means perceptions by means of the sense organs, sight, hearing, taste, smell, and touch. Thinking means the function of intellectual cognition and of logical conclusions. Feeling is a function of subjective valuation, typically how something affects you or others. And intuition is perception by way of the unconscious content, such as potential, vision, and possibilities. Sensation establishes what is actually present. Thinking enables us to recognize its meaning. Feeling tells us its value, and intuition points to the possibilities as to whence it came and where it is going in any given situation. With that established, it's time to talk about the 8 primary types based on the extroverted and introverted versions of each of the 4 functions. First, we have thinking. People with the primary function of extroverted thinking prioritize objective logic, external evidence, and systematic order, applying universal principles. They can be emotionally underdeveloped, dogmatic, and neglectful of personal relationships, needs, and values. On the other hand, people who are introverted thinking primary prioritize internal logic and theories, subjective understanding, and depth over practicality. They detach from external realities and can be rigid and impractical despite their intellectualism. They also struggle with expressing emotions. Next is feeling. Extroverted feeling primaries are defined by their orientation to social harmony, external values, and emotional connection. They often adapt their feelings to societal norms and can suppress logic, struggle for authenticity, and rely on external validation, whether it is giving it to others or getting it themselves. Now, introverted feeling primaries are defined by their orientation to subjective values and personal ethics. They have a subtle expression of feelings, and they seek inner harmony while risking isolation, misunderstanding, emotional bottling, and practical inefficiency. Next is sensation. Extroverted sensation dominants focus on tangible reality, seeking vivid experiences and practical engagement. They value sensory enjoyment, detail, and aesthetics, but can struggle with abstract possibilities, intuition, and deeper reflection. Introverted sensation dominants, on the other hand, focus on internalizing sensory experiences, comparing present stimuli with stored impressions and memories. They have repressed intuition that can produce vague, unsettling insights. The last pair we have is intuition. Extroverted intuition primaries concern themselves with external possibilities, spotting hidden potential and opportunities. They thrive on novelty and innovation, but can struggle with focus, follow-through, judgment, and grounding themselves in present realities. Introverted intuition primaries concern themselves with unconscious images and underlying symbolic meanings. They are creative and visionary, but neglect practical realities, sensory experiences, and external demands. A person's type is determined by the initials of whichever function they use primarily. So an extroverted thinking primary is an ET. For a person's second most used function, we need to think about the rational versus irrational dichotomy. The rational functions of thinking and feeling on an opposing axis are grouped this way due to being used for judgment and valuation, whereas the irrational functions of sensing and intuition on another opposing axis are grouped this way due to being used for perception, identifying what is happening rather than evaluation. A person's auxiliary, aka second most prevalent function, denoted by the brackets next to their primary function's initials, has to be from the opposite group to the primary, as in, Someone whose dominant function is a rational type has to have an irrational type as the auxiliary, and vice versa. For example, an extroverted feeling primary can only be EFSC, EFSI, EFNE, or EFNI, and an introverted intuition primary can only be INTE, INTI, INFE, or INFI. Therefore, if your strongest function was extroverted sensation and your second strongest was introverted thinking, your type would be denoted as ESTI. There are other ways to denote one's type, but this is the way that I prefer. And that was a general overview of Jungian typology. If you'd like to learn more, check the description below for more information. Take care.